This is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. It's Wednesday, March 8th, 2023 at 5 p.m. And we will begin with a call to order by roll call. Linda Escobedo.
Present.
Mike Lawson, not here. Rich Feely.
Present.
Carrie LaFleur has informed me she will not be joining us, and Keith Bergman present. So we have three members and a quorum present. So welcome. We also have with us our Concord's Director of Planning and Land Management, Marcia Rasmussen, our Regional Housing Services Office Director, Liz Rust, and our other housing partners, Diane Proctor from the Community Preservation Committee, Stephen Bader from the Concord Housing Authority. So welcome all. I was not able to prepare a set of minutes from our last meeting on February 22nd, so there's nothing for us to act on tonight. I'll have those ready at a future meeting. And where we've just got three, if for any reason we're not able to act on all the business or have all the discussions that we think we might want to have, Carrie LaFleur has indicated she'd be available next Monday or Tuesday night if we wanted to meet. So we can get to that later. Let me just ask, are there time constraints? I know Marcia's here to talk about a particular topic, which is lower down on our agenda, but I'd be happy to move it up okay. So we'll stick with the agenda for now. Next item is a debrief from the public hearings on affordable housing articles on the town meeting warrant. And for starters, I wanted to just report for our record that on March 1st, the Finance Committee unanimously voted to recommend Articles 28 and 29 on the warrant, which would together transfer to the trust some $2,044,000 and change from prior appropriations for Christopher Heights. We're grateful for the Finance Committee's supportive recommendation, very grateful to the Select Board and the Community Preservation Committee for inserting these articles on the warrant. I don't think I was unclear whether the Finance Committee had actually taken votes on the Community Preservation article or not. It didn't sound like it. So
they're waiting to hear about Article E in the warrant, and I think that's become clearer and crystallized as the week has gone on, and the public hearing on the Warner's Pond has taken place, Keith.
Yes. So
I suspect that as tomorrow evening they will probably take a position. So thank you for asking.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Because that among the housing articles is $500,000 for Assabet River Bluff and $33,000 to fund the Regional Housing Services Office. So we're much interested in those as well. So thank you, Diane, for that update. The Select Board, I'm told, will be by Carrie will be taking their votes either on the 20th or the 27th of March on the articles. They've not taken votes yet on they had a discussion about what information do they need to be able to take votes. Now they'll be prepared at their next two meetings. They don't meet this coming Monday night, but later in the month that they will be taking votes, and we'll keep an eye on them just to make sure. I mean, my personal hope would be that that maybe with the unanimous support of the Finance Committee for the transfers, and if the Select Board I know is also supportive, whether those transfer articles might find their way onto the consent agenda at town meeting. If not, that's fine. We're ready. Not not fearful of making a presentation, just fearful of taking up more time than the voters want. So we're happy to take yes for an answer, and however we can get there will be great. One issue I did want to raise, though, from follow-up from the Finance Committee meeting, they did ask for a written response, and I wish I'd done better with an answer on my feet, but it was late in the evening, and my main and what I didn't know was whether they were going to support the articles or not. But one of the questions that they did ask, and it's a good one, is and they've asked for a written response, is what, with a $3 million balance in the trust, how many affordable units could the trust create with that balance? Interesting question. It's not a simple question. It depends on what the level of funding is per unit. And you know, if a project has only town funding and no outside state funding or private donations, it could get very expensive. And you know, I'm not sure what if the on Assabet River Bluff, for example, I'm not sure if there are outside funding sources or state funding that's proceed. So Liz says no. So that's $3 million for 5 units. So that's $600,000 a unit. Just so you know, and so that's a number that that needs to be shared, would be shared with the Finance Committee.
So Keith,
Wait, I'm sorry, Keith, what was that? What was your math there?
We've spent 100, and from our prior discussions on this very Zoom account, $1 million has been spent thus far to acquire the property. Another $500,000 is coming in from the CPC. And on top of that, I've been told that another 1.5 million is needed, which is 3 million.
Yeah, so we haven't really, I don't think the CSGC has formalized that construction number.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's,
Well, I guess
we have other numbers. Let me just say a different way.
okay, yeah, give me a lower number that I can use.
So there's many projects that have been done in Concord. So we have those numbers, and we also have some numbers from other projects in the area of what kind of total subsidy or what the development costs are, and then what kind of local subsidies people have done. So there's you know, using actual projects versus, you know, Assabet River Bluff is still to, you know, it's not a solid number, really.
Yeah, here's the problem, though. As we knew they could, the Finance Committee knows how to do math. And when they ask a math question, I had numbers which I was told by my own committee not to proceed with. Just don't use numbers on future projects. Just ask for the 3 million. Well, the Finance Committee wants to know something about what is the per unit cost of what would you do with the 3 million. So I think we're obliged in some fashion to come up with some.
Right. I'm just saying to use numbers that represent projects that were completed. That's all.
Yeah. Then what would those be?
I have an inventory of them. I don't have them right here. I wasn't prepared.
Okay. If you could get those, we're owed a response to the Finance Committee. I'd love to receive your input so that we can give them a range of options or something rather than silence. I just don't want to give silence as an answer.
Of course.
So that would be great. Thanks. On the Junction Village one, there and I know that one is very much in oh yeah, Linda.
Keith, and this is the very place where I was going to go with my comments before Liz appropriately jumped in. You know, I was there as others were and heard their request, and clearly we want to be responsive to their requests. On the other hand, they went ahead and voted affirmative action on those 2 articles. So whether or not they still need that information is one question, but more importantly, because I hear, you know, in general, we want to be responsive. I would hope that whatever gets drafted, that the committee has a chance to look at, because I think there's, for all the reasons that you've just pointed out, you know, there's a lot of, it depends on the project. It depends when the project, it depends on what are the sources of funding for the project, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd hate to, and we also know from previous experience that even when it's, even when you qualify it 6 times around the block, as I've just done, once numbers are on paper, people, it ends up being, held over us when scenarios change. So I just hope that there's an opportunity for us, after all the good thinking goes into attempting to answer their question, that we have a chance to respond.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to, it's the reason why I was asked to give an answer the next day in an email, and I didn't. And I instead notified the board members that we would be discussing, the trust members, that we would be discussing that at tonight's meeting. I'm happy to, I think it's important enough that we ought to actually have the committee vote on it without too much delay. And if Carrie's available next Monday or Tuesday night, I'd like to have schedule a meeting of our trust where we could discuss that matter and as a board, and have a board response to it. It's already a week beyond when the question was posed. And I think that if we can indicate that we'll be taking it up at a meeting, that would be a respectful way to, I think, to approach the issue. So.
And then the only other comment I'd like to add, so I appreciate that response. The only other comment I'd like to add to that is that even with positive action at town meeting, that money is technically not available to July. And there is a lot of, a lot of things could change between now and July in terms of what projects are available or what priorities are available. So I think all that has to be taken into account in terms of how we respond. And then I'll stop. Thank you.
Thanks. And just, I'll give another example that is simply information that we've heard in public. But for example, if for Junction Village, the subsidy required by a developer is $130,000 per unit, then simple math, $3 million divided into that is 23 units. So that's an answer.
Yeah,
It's not going to be the answer for every project. It may not even be the answer for that project, but it is one example of what it might be. And the other end is that where there's no town funding, and if Assabet River Bluff is whatever its total development cost comes entirely from the town, then that's a big number per unit.
Keith, I think this requires one of your classic preambles and then a few examples from Liz. I think we have to say it depends on whether you have to buy the land. It depends on how big the units are. It depends on how dense they are, and it depends on the income target. Obviously, if people can pay something towards it, the developer will want less. And it depends on, whether the project would qualify for some form of what I'm going to call fancy funding, tax credits and things like
Right.
that.
Right.
So I think we've got to say all those things, and then we can say, but we appreciate your concern. Here are 3 recent projects. This is, and then the same points in your preamble.
Yeah.
This is, the land was free. They're large units, they're small units, whatever.
Right. I think that's a thoughtful approach. And I think that if we can bring that item back to a meeting at whenever, the trust would like to meet, I'm simply saying that Carrie is available on a couple of days next week. I think we can have a meeting, vote on if folks have suggested preamble language that they'd want to use. I think it's important for us to to have some kind, be operating in some kind of, universe where we're mindful of all of the
Keith, if you
different
want, I'll
factors
write
that
a
can-
preamble that goes along the lines of what I just said. I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Appreciate that. Diane?
I would just add to Rich's list, infrastructure costs. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes it's all there and you can just, but other times
Just
that,
plug into the sewer.
that's right. There you go. So, that becomes significant in some sites. So just wanted to make sure you added that to the, to the
Okay,
list.
so we've got like 6 or 7 factors
Right.
that,
Yeah,
6 or 7 degrees of freedom. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Diane. I'll,
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments on that? I think we've got a plan of action. Yeah, Stefan.
And obviously, it depends on the number of units. If you're talking a one-off, like 910 Main Street or 365 Commonwealth Avenue, the numbers are very different than they are in a 50-unit building.
Right. Or even a 5-unit. I mean, it
Or
doesn't
even a
start to
5-unit,
get,
a 3-unit.
the economies of scale don't start kicking in until a much higher number. Yeah.
Can I
Liz?
share something quickly?
Yeah.
So this is from the Junction Village town meeting presentation, I think in 2017. So I don't know if you can see that. Let me just see if I can make that bigger. This is part of the presentation. So there was a slide here that talked about, here, I could just go back to here's what the presentation was.
Okay.
Article 30, 2017. So it goes through the whole thing of Junction Village, right? Christopher Heights. But it had a slide here on housing project costs. So it had all the different projects or many that were done in Concord and what the contribution was in cost per unit. And then it had also, and we can update this, other projects in examples of local contributions to affordable housing projects in other towns. Like
Excellent.
Newton,
Yeah.
Needham, Sudbury, Brookline, and all like that. And then the cost per unit. So the local contribution. So we can take the same kind of approach, the
Yeah.
Concord examples and this, and update it for new information. So this is just to say that we have a basis that's been done, that's been presented to the town on that very topic. So
Right.
it's not like it's never happened before.
Yeah.
We know this information. In fact, it was scrutinized and reviewed,
That's great. That's very helpful. Was there, Diane, you have your hand up. Okay. All right. Was there information? Oh, that was it. That you had your thumb up, not your whole hand. Okay.
Yeah, I
Linda, you
think
have we'll call on Linda and then Stefan.
Liz, that's terrific. Just if you do end up using some of those same figures, just to point out that there was significant dollars returned on Peter Buckley.
Yeah.
So that would lower the cost
Sure,
that's
sure.
shown on that
And
slide.
some of those, I mean, they're old and they're pre-COVID, so it's kind of apples and oranges, but it's just to say that we've done this before. We track this very closely. We measure projects against this and look at it. So this isn't a new concept in terms of looking at the per unit, and the data will show that it really varies based on some of the parameters that Keith mentioned. But so it's really a range, and so that's all.
I think we need to put one more point in the preamble just to remind them that your numbers are presented in 2017 and 5-year construction costs are probably up somewhere around 40%.
Yeah, no, so I'll update it with current projects and all the
Okay.
information that we know. So, but just, it
That's
was
great.
really just to say that this isn't a new question. It's not a new topic.
Yeah,
And,
and that's a great answer. That's a very thoughtful frame of reference for the community to have and for us to have too. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Stefan?
I was just going to say, add the year that the data comes from, but that's
Right.
been covered. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so we'll be getting information from Liz. We'll be scheduling an agenda item for the trust to have vote on our official position on that, and we can move forward. Any other comments on that? What among questions that I had for Carrie about this, just sort of the debrief was whether the town would be pursuing Community One Stop for Growth. It's an annual, it's only a pre-application, but it's an opportunity that exists only through next week, March 17th, for the town to submit up to 5 projects for potential funding. There's a formal application round in a couple of months for submitting funding applications. The expression of interest that DHCD allows communities to make is sort of an opportunity to informally say, hey, here's a list of up to 5 projects we'd like to consider pursuing with state funding, state grant funding, and so that can lead to a conversation between the town and the state about that. So if that, Carrie said that she's looking into it. No guarantees that goes in, but she'll take a look at that, and if so, it might provide an opportunity for dialogue. The ability to apply for grants after, beyond March 17th still exists, and I know that we'll be staffed up to be able to do that. But I appreciate that it's being looked into. Because that's another, the state grant funding is certainly one way to reduce the town's per unit cost. Last item I want to mention under town meeting debriefs is that the planning board public hearing is now scheduled for Wednesday, March 29th at 7 p.m. And of interest to us is the Article 35 combined business residence zoning, and other things as well, but just so you know. Any other comments or debrief on our public hearings on town meetings before we move on? All right, next item is updating the trust guidelines and funding application forms and procedures. I think we'll want to put this I'm very glad that Rich has done a draft document where we have so few members here tonight. I'd suggest that we schedule a discussion on this for our next meeting, unless there are.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is have a revised document. I have Linda's comments. Thank you, Linda. And I'll rattle Mike Lawson's cage and see if he's usually pretty good about commenting on things. And Keith, if you can give me yours.
I will.
And let me come into the next meeting, or have prior to the meeting, a revised draft that would reflect at least most of what 4 of us on the board want. I realize Carrie's probably too busy to be able to.
Yeah, and thank you, Rich. I appreciate that. And sort of as a follow-up to some of the prior discussions that we just had, I think what I'd be looking for in general guidelines or what we're looking at in funding and application forms is something that has the applicant indicating what a total project cost estimate is and what other funding sources they're going after. I think that's important information for us to know, even if it's only an estimate. Because I think with what the limited resources we have, the trust should try to be using its funds to leverage outside funding where that opportunity exists. Sometimes we're going to have to be, between the trust and the CBC, the town might be the sole source provider of large S, but sometimes we'll want to make sure that we're trying to leverage outside funding as well.
I'll get that in. You're right.
Great, thank you. Next item is preparing for the Concord Housing Roundtable. And last time we'd set a proposed date of Wednesday, April 12th, 7 p.m. And plans are afoot now to identify a location for a hybrid meeting, trying to find the large meeting room in the second floor of Town Hall is not available. It sounds like is not available in April. So for whatever reason, and so the Harvey Wheeler Community Center has been suggested as an alternative site, which be available for, we're looking for a room that's large enough theoretically that if all of the committees showed up, because it is the select board, it's the planning board, the CPC and all of the housing groups that we'd like to have a room that's large enough for those, and the ability to have a hybrid meeting so that others can choose either the public can choose either to attend or to watch remotely. The select board hearing room, while it's available, I think is too small for
So
that.
Keith,
Yeah.
the CMLP has a room that's quite large and that is set up for hybrid meetings.
That's what I was just going to say, Linda. Terrific.
Well, Harvey Wheeler's is available, the Harvey Wheeler Auditorium, which is also available for, would set up for hybrid.
And any thought about what does a hybrid meeting look like on at either of those places? It's about are you looking at it's not like when you see a hybrid meeting at on Kaiser Road, is it?
Well, they have a Zoom cart, they call it, right? So that they wheel in the Zoom, the big screen so that you see people on the screen, right? That's how
Okay.
you're going to see them.
And the people that are watching us at home see what?
I assume they're seeing what where the panel is, right? That's where
Keith,
the computer is.
Yeah, Diane.
if you have Minuteman Media Network,
Yeah.
as they so often so graciously do, film it, then they can set it up so that you have a screen up above where you can see everybody who is attending in a hybrid fashion. And somebody can be in the back on a computer picking up any questions in a chat box that participants who are remote may send forward. So it works quite well in the library is what I'm speaking to. I suspect it works well in Harvey Wheeler. I've just not been familiar with that. So, but it works well in the library because we've done that with the league. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Liz?
I was just going to say, do you want to reserve the Harvey Wheeler? You saw all that. They just sent the forms, and the auditorium at Harvey Wheeler is free on that day. And we could just
I just
reserve
don't know what the product looks like. And I'm bitterly disappointed that the town house is closed, is not available during April. Linda?
The benefit of the library is that it wouldn't have to be set up. I know when we've been at Harvey Wheeler, we have to set it up and take it down. All the seating and any tables you want.
Libraries.
Right?
Like if the is that the Goodwin room? Is that what?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's quite
Yeah,
large.
that's a great venue if that works. They did a great job with the I did see the broadcasts of the league's DEI, the opening.
Is that like in the is that in the basement in West Concord? No.
No,
Oh, that's the new room over there.
Upstairs, the main room as you walk in the main library.
Yeah, get you. And how do you reserve that?
It's a beautiful venue where you have to call them and speak with they have a reserve process. Stefan has an inside track on this one. He might be able to help.
Ask for Barbara.
Ask for Barbara. Okay, that's the inside
Okay,
track.
all right,
Ask
very
for
good.
Barbara.
Very good. Yeah, I just the more pleasant the surroundings, the more likely people are to be there and be happy about it. So great. And we want to make sure that the people at home are not, when I go to there's a cart that does sometimes the cheerless breakfasts where I'm craning as a speaker, I'm craning my neck to be seen if I'm sitting in the wrong place in the around the hearing, or people have seen the back of my head for most of the time. So All right, well, that all sounds good. Anything else about prep for the housing roundtable? I see hands up from Linda? No? Okay, very good. Okay, next are what I'm calling housing production updates. CHDC, anything from the CHDC about Assabet or Junction, then update from the Housing Authority about 1031 Main, and then to hear about from Marcia about 91B Main Street. And do we is it okay for me to take Marcia out of order on?
Please.
Yeah, so Marcia, please, and thanks for, there's a
just
lot of
jump
new
in.
information for us on here, so thank you.
Just jump in quickly, though. The West Concord Advisory Committee took a position on the Junction Village project Monday night and voted 4 affirmative and 2 abstentions to support family housing at the Junction Village site. So Lee Smith was in attendance, so he heard that, and I think they have followed up with a letter to provide that level of support. So I just wanted to share that
Okay.
piece of information.
In fact, since we're talking about Junction Village, there are 2 other things that we might as well say. First is at 7 o'clock tonight, does the league have a meeting on of its housing committee?
They,
Is that-
they do, and Ingrid Detweiler is here. She's the chair of that. Some of us have other obligations at 7, but
Okay.
Ingrid, I think, can speak to that. It is at 7 o'clock.
Okay, is the for those of us who are interested, is there a way to watch that, or is that just the league? I couldn't find for some meetings I can find a link at the league's website, but I couldn't find this one. But that's fine.
So if you get, let's see, if you get Monday member news, there's a link on that.
Okay.
If you're a league member, go to the Monday member news and there'll be a link for the meeting. Otherwise, I'm not sure. Stefan, I
Right.
think that's the only way.
Right. Yeah, that's fine. I was at the CHDC meeting at 8 o'clock this morning and heard all that they were doing. Also, that they're looking at the CHDC is looking to set up a community meeting on Wednesday, April 26th, based on their discussion.
Keith, we can send you that link.
Okay,
We
thank
can send everybody on this call that link,
Okay.
or put it in there's no chat box. Never mind.
Okay.
I'll go find it and send it to you.
All right, thanks very much. Yeah, I can begin and end my day on thinking about Junction Village, so.
So I'll also report, if I could, at the
Yeah.
CHDC meeting, the CHDC, heard and has heard, all the support for family housing. And the CHDC members, though, in their draft RFP that they've kind of started to put together, did not want to exclude any options. So I think that they're planning to say that they're interested in, that their goal would be family housing, but that they would take proposals on age-restricted housing as well.
Very good. Thank you. And that and that after their community meeting on April 26th, that it would be after that point that they would actually, decide what form their RFP
Yeah,
or
I think that they're going to
invitation.
go for an RFP versus an
Yeah.
RFI followed by an RFP. I
Okay.
believe that that's their current thinking.
Okay. Very good.
That would be
Anything else
kind of
on
like an
Junction?
early May-ish would be the earliest there, but
Right.
yeah.
Since we're talking about Junction Village now, anything else we need any other updates we want to give?
Well, so we've
move on?
had some feedback from the Department of Corrections, who has confirmed that access is only through Winthrop Street in terms of regular residential access. So we've gotten that in writing via an email from the Deputy Commissioner. And so I've asked for them to put that on letterhead so that we can then put that out there. So back in the day, 2013, that they did grant a emergency access easement. So that's already been recorded. So that's a given. And then the temporary construction access for like that little path road-ish by the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail right on Commonwealth Avenue, that they'll put that in writing that can be used for construction, but that wouldn't be an easement. You know, it's just a temporary permission thing.
I've just sent that email to each of you, so who are not league members, so that you can join if you wish.
Thank you, Diane. So, so that's out there. I don't know what that changes, but it kind of, you know, puts that, but it might have some impact on the density that people think is acceptable for the site, given the access going down Winthrop Street.
Very good, thanks. Any questions for
I think
Liz
that,
about-
let me just, I'm sorry, the density in the RFP would probably be something like 20 to 50 units, you know, a wide range.
Right.
And rental and ownership. So it opens the door to many possibilities for proposals.
Very good. Okay. Ready to go to the surplus state property with Marcia. Thank you.
Okay, back when Concord Housing Development Corporation was actively pursuing 930 Main Street for acquisition, we realized that it was important to get an easement over the adjacent state land for access to the rear portion of that house. And as part of that conversation with the state, we learned that there is a process for them to declare it surplus and to appraise the property. And it took them a few years, but they finally got back to me just last week to say, we have appraised the value as a 2-lot development potential with 2 duplexes. And the value of the land has to meet the Federal Highway Administration requirements. So the land was initially acquired by the state using federal highway funds. And so they would be looking for something on order of $620,000 for this parcel. I do have a GIS map available, so I can pull that up if you're interested. Okay. Wait a minute. I have to hold on just a minute. I have to make some revisions here. But it will come with 3 easements included on that site. One is a frontage easement because they anticipate possibly widening Route 62 at some point in time. And so they want to be able to have that ability. There's also the existing easement that has been provided to 930 Main Street, and that has been recorded. And then a third easement might be to the rear portion of the lot to allow for some drainage. So here is the GIS map with the parcel is in between 900 and 930 Main Street. The property line is here, and I'm going to trace it because it's hard to see with the wetlands and floodplain. It comes across over to Route 2, comes along Route 2, and then along 900. And that is the property. It has sufficient frontage to create 2 standard house lots, and this is a Residence C zoning district. So constructing duplexes is allowed by right. So we have estimated about this parcel is about 1.45 acres. There are probably 25,000 square feet that are out of the wetlands. We'd be looking at a 25-foot setback from those wetlands. We'd probably have to go out and delineate that if it wasn't done yet. But and then there is sewer available in Main Street. It is on the opposite side of the road, so there are some expenses involved with tying into town sewer. And if it is more than the 4 house lots, there's probably some process that the Public Works Commission will have to undertake to allow for any additional units. But 25,000 square feet is a pretty good sized lot to be, or upland area to be working with. We don't have a lot of The topography I have on underneath, so there's some steep areas, but I don't think it's insurmountable. And I think that it's an opportunity, and the state said they haven't provided the final plan yet. I have to get back to the person that called me, but I believe that there is still interest in acquiring the property and on the part of the town, and possibly through the use of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So it's something for your consideration. The town doesn't have any other resources available at this point in time. And it would take another year before we would be able to go to town meeting to acquire that otherwise. So I'll entertain questions if you have them.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, Marcia, for bringing this to our attention. Do you have any sense that, I mean, I have to say the coincidence of finding out about it, of having the state approach you about a piece of surplus property after maybe not approaching you for a while, is we know the current administration is actively looking at what state properties can be declared surplus for to create housing, especially affordable housing. So, and I've reached out to some contacts just to see, you know, or others, is this unusual? Are there others that are being approached proactively by the state about regarding regarding surplus state property in their communities? I've asked MABC to take a look at that in particular. But
if I may, Keith,
yeah.
if I may, 15, 20 years ago, the state did go through this process of declaring a number of parcels surplus, and the town has acquired them, or the various affordable housing trusts have worked to acquire them in the past. It was because of the Habitat for Humanity process, and they did the outreach to the state to begin with, that set all of this in motion. So it is opportune, but it wasn't. Yeah. It's something that we've been working on for the past 3 years. I had offered at the time to provide an appraisal service and other opportunities, and they said, no, we have to go through this other formal process. We have to offer it to all the other state divisions before it can be declared surplus. So that was the process, and it is a lengthy one.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I appreciate that backstory. I'm wondering, and the other question that I've asked of some outside the town is, are there other examples where properties purchased with Federal Highway Administration funds were whether there was the ability to have a town, would it be Concord alone that is so bold as to ask, we'd like to acquire it for affordable housing. Can you give it to us at low cost or no cost? I
was informed that they would be willing to hear some discussion, but they could not give it at no cost. So I think that there will be some conversation or negotiation about that price. And they have to balance it with what Federal Highway Administration requires.
Right, or what the Healy Driscoll administration is willing to do to actually stand behind an effort to promote affordable housing. And I think it'd be important to be on the radar screen to. I think the town would do well to reach out to its federal legislators, or the congresswomen and senators it'd be tough, good thing we don't need an act of Congress out of this, but if there's administrative action that could be taken by the Biden administration to make this property available for affordable housing in Concord, that would be great. But I think sometimes, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think we ought not to be bashful about asking for, asking for relief from the Federal Highway Administration to paying anything for this. Rich?
Yeah, that sort of leads to my question. I'm concerned that we need to keep our powder dry for Junction Village and Assabet Bluff, but I don't want to pass this up. Is there any way we can sort of string it along until we know what the, commitments for Assabet Bluff and Junction Village are going to be? Presumably the highway department isn't buying it, but could they sell it publicly? I mean, the other thing that worries me a little bit is asking for free land when we got it 10 years ago for Junction Village and nothing has happened.
Well, because
As I noted, this was Federal Highway Administration funding that acquired the property. The rules are that they receive full market value. They are willing to negotiate a number that's less than market value. They have appraised that market value as 2 lots with duplexes. So just to say, yes, we could. And I think it makes sense to reach out to our federal legislators and have that conversation, but we should also be aware, and they could, now that they've declared it surplus, go full market. So that's the risk that you're taking.
So there is a chance we could lose it if we dragged it out, right? I mean, the land price for 4 units isn't bad compared to Assabet Bluff.
Well, I think we've got a couple of things here. Number one, I can't believe that the governor, who is rather, forcefully and saying all over the place how important housing is, even promoting housing projects over the objections of mayors. If I'm watching what's happening in Braintree, South Shore Mall, and elsewhere, that if there's some strategy that I think if I don't know how this town would do it, but I think it's important to send the message to the highest levels of the state and federal government that the town's interested in the property. We'd like to achieve it for as low cost as we can and put as much housing there as we can, because it's got a sewer, and it takes a sewer to make a village. So I hope that's the sort of the first thing that we can do. I can't believe that the state would declare a property a surplus and let it be used for for other purposes, although unless the idea is, unless they can read the map too and say, oh, look, it's got a sewer connection, you could put with a 40B that you could put 20 units on that or whatever it might be. But I think it would be important for the town to express at the highest levels of state and federal government interest in the property, and however that happens, go to have the select board take that up, or however that happens. That would be my recommendation. I don't know how others feel about it.
Yeah, it can't hurt. I mean, as I say, my only concern is having enough money in the trust to do the things that are already in motion. But if we can get this free or at a very discounted price of a couple $100,000 or something like that, we should certainly push to do it.
Other thoughts about what would you say is what's the next step, Marcia, that you have, is there a deadline you have to report back? Oh, I see Diane has a hand up.
I wonder if we've ever tried something rather imaginative, which is to get somebody, a philanthropist in town, to give us the money to buy that land, hold it until we are then ready to determine how to use it best, And then we could, on the resources that have accumulated, return that investment to the person who put the money down. Is there somebody, a kind of a public-private partnership with somebody who is willing to exercise that kind of largesse? I don't know if it's ever been tried, but it might be a way, Frank, to hold the land while we're figuring out what else is going on. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, we'd certainly be willing to, we've discussed the fact that we're not going to get a lot of money in the foundation unless we have a particular project to sell. So, you know, if somebody wants to put their, you know, essentially give the money to the trust or the foundation, and we'll give it to the trust, buy it, and then commit to them that they can have their name on it, just like a room in a hospital or something, that might be very good.
Yeah, Linda?
Well, a couple thoughts here. To your point about appealing to the highest levels possible in government. A couple of years ago, Mike Lawson and myself met with one of the state reps to specifically around a piece of property that we were trying to have declared surplus into the state. And he, through his channels, he was able to give us some important information at that time. So, you know, there is some benefit to pursuing some of these conversations. But having said that, you know, when Marcia already has been working on this for 3 years and is already in conversation with particular person, and you know, he's been very clear about the terms and so forth. You got to be careful about risking losing it altogether. So I guess that's what I wanted to say.
Not in my experience, but that if that's Concord's experience, fine. Stefan?
Or do you want, okay.
I was gonna say, if the town can get control of the land without taking ownership, that is a definite strategy that I would pursue, so that construction cost becomes an issue. Something like Habitat could work on it. If the town takes it, I'm afraid of situation like the housing authority had with 365 Commonwealth Avenue. Cost $750,000 to put up one unit. I don't think we want to go down that road if we can avoid that.
So Keith, one of the things you asked me is what would it look like moving forward, and what I can do is have a conversation with Carrie LaFleur, town manager, to explore some of the things that you've talked about this evening, and then to reach back to the state to say, okay, we're very, very interested. We want to significantly reduce the amount if possible, and we would like to have some conversations with our federal representatives, and then see where that conversation is, and try to find out what their time frame is, what they're looking at, and if I can, and then I would come back to you with that information.
I think that's great. I think one of the and I just want to say that the idea that the town, ultimately the town's desire may not be to own it as much as to control it, so that that we can put together the deal. I think that's an excellent theme there. I think also in dealing with the state, again, if the administration wants to do something, you can get, be nice to get a no interest loan from, Mass Development or someone. I remember putting together, we had a $20 million pier replacement project in Provincetown. We needed funding when we didn't have any to put it all together, and Mass Development was there as a for a loan. So there's, and the state administration can tell us what is there, but I think it's important that we just hold up our hand and say, this is a piece of property which, unlike everything else on our plate, has sewer in front of it. So
Mhm.
that sort of puts it in a different category of what's possible, but not if we're paying $600,000 for the, you know, for the acquisition. And we'd like to do something lower, and we're, you know, we'd be ready to support it. Rich?
Yeah, my only other, I mean, free is best, cheaper is better, but I wonder if there's also an option to keep it from going away of paying a modest option fee that gives us 5 years to put the money together and buy it, we can't get it for free. And that kind of modest fee would be a very reasonable investment by the trust.
Thanks, thanks, Rich. Any other comments on this? It's just see how, you know, the idea of a lot with a sewer just gets the juices flowing here. So it
As
really-
Marcia probably already knows, when the work was active on 930, certainly Habitat expressed a specific interest in working with the town on this property if we could acquire it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Great opportunity.
Which means the only funds that were necessary were the acquisition of the property and the supplemental money to get the sewer in the ground, and then Habitat raised the remaining funds for the construction, as far as I know.
That's correct.
At 930, I mean,
Yes.
will that work? Are we gonna have to own it as a town? You know, because there's, you know, they're selling it at a discounted price. Or could we do an Assabet Bluffs or 930 Main Street type of deal?
I don't know, and I can ask that question.
I think it would be worth finding out.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this to us, Marcia, and for our spirited discussion from all of us. I want to go on to another agenda item, and just we'll go back one to the Concord Housing Authority. 1031 Main Street from, and I'm glad Stefan's here. I'd touch bases with Stephanie, the chair of the Housing Authority, before this meeting. I attended last week's Housing Authority meeting and heard that the project is sort of, it's on hold. And or how would you characterize it, Stefan? I heard on hold, not proceeding, and just didn't know what your take on it was.
My take on it is that you heard correctly, however, asterisk.
Yeah.
And the asterisk I would characterize as it's a question of figuring a way forward to accommodate neighbor opposition. I think that's what's putting it on hold at this point in
Right.
time.
Right.
And I don't think that has been fully explored.
Yeah.
That's my editorial comment, but you heard correctly.
Yeah. Liz?
I had a conversation with Jennifer Polito on this topic, and I encouraged her and the Housing Authority to really talk about this in some detail at the Housing Roundtable before walking away from it. I mean, this is the kind of project where, you know, housing supporters could come out in support. So it's not just the concerns of the neighbors, and if it's walk, I mean, no one wants to be, taking all those negative comments on a routine basis, and at some point you just say, I'm just walking away from it. It's one unit of housing, it's not even worth it. But I think that the housing supporters and the roundtable folks should have an opportunity to weigh in and to see if they want to support and get behind the Housing Authority in this effort. That was my
Thanks,
suggestion.
Liz. Marcia, and then Rich.
I received a request for information on some of the history of the property, and it was approved as a rental garden apartment and townhouse project back in 1968. The road was not constructed until about 1974 when the units were all constructed. And it was converted to condominium back in 1982. And in that special permit that was issued back in 1968, it states that the road is to be private. So there are some things that need to be, if we're even thinking about making it a public way, there were some questions raised about that. And again, the whole precedent issue. However, if the housing authority, if the owners of the property at 1030, is it 1031, have been using it continuously for the past 20 years, I think you have an adverse possession case where you have the right of access. And so that's a separate legal question that I think needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, we're planning to do an article on it in our spring newsletter. And, saying, how unfortunate that we can't build a small house for a disabled person on land that the housing authority already controls. So I think it's great if Marcia can get, some feedback without paying enormous lawyers' fees on our ability to assert, or the housing authority's ability to assert, a right of, historical use. So I don't think we want to tie money up in it now, but I think we should still be supporting the housing authority, and we're going to do that.
Thanks. Other comments? Stefan, it looks like you want to say something again.
I was going to be snarky and say the town has some experience with lawyers and right of passage over public ways or private ways, but
Can you be talking about Estabrook
you can.
Woods?
What
Right,
do you mean?
Yeah, you can, as we discussed here before, you could, for the 50,000 that was requested, you could spend all of that on the access, all of that and more, just to litigate the access issues, which is sort of why we put a pause in it anyway. But so what I'm hearing is that there's a desire to keep it on keep it on the table, at least through the Concord Housing Roundtable. And I guess I would say to the Housing Authority, if there comes a point thereafter that you want to just officially put it on hold, maybe we could agree that we would deprogram the money, at least in the short term, because so that it would be available and you'd be free to come back in the future. But that just something to think about as we go forward, because the larger issue for all that we're doing is, if we've only got a finite amount of money, how do we want to program that money? What do we want to spend in any given year or over time? So it's worth having trying to come to a resolution of at what point do we go forward, or do we just say come back later when you're ready to proceed? So
message received, and that makes sense. I appreciate that, and I appreciate Liz's comments as well. And that's where I'm at, and I will carry that back to our next meeting. Thank you.
very good. We didn't actually talk about Assabet River Bluff per se. I don't know if there's any new information on that. Where the housing authority, since housing authority is in discussions with the CHDC about taking over the existing 2-family after a planned residential development is approved by the planning board, dividing that lot into 2. And I know that that the CHDC has a plan for how that would happen. So I know those things are happening, and I'm glad to see that all of that's moving along. Any questions for anyone?
The concept site plan, I think, is in a pretty solid place. I don't think that any more work will be done on that. That's what will be used to solicit development proposals whenever that happens. So that's, you know, a big chunk of work that's been done. And as you mentioned, I think that there's a, you know, a bunch of planning, legal work to try to endeavor to split the parcels, and that would be done prior to conveying anything to the housing authority. So I think that kind of work will go on, as well as the physical improvements needed to add it to the SHI.
Very good. Thanks so much. I'm going to move on to the next item, status of proposed state legislation. Simply to say, I'd invite Rich to talk, but I do know that the LOHA Coalition has a planning meeting this next Thursday, a week from tomorrow at 1 p.m. to discuss the continuing push for co-sponsors for the statewide bill and a lobby day at the State House that's planned for some
May 3rd at the moment.
May 3rd. Okay. Very good.
You want a brief report, Keith?
Sure.
'Cause I was in the steering committee meeting yesterday. All of the smaller jurisdictions that had passed local transfer fees have refiled. The funny thing is that the four biggies, Cambridge, Boston, Somerville, and Brookline, have not. But I think it's because of the local government schedule and other things. I think it will happen. The statewide bills have been filed. There is a potentially competing statewide bill being filed from the senator on the Cape, which would say, okay, you can have a transfer fee, but only if you've dedicated a certain amount of CPA funds and local short-term rental funds and stuff like that. So at the moment, LOHA is, you know, sort of hanging back on that one. But I'm going to take a look at the law and maybe with a little help from Carrie, figure out whether that Cape law would be a problem if that was the one passed.
Very good. Thanks. Thanks very much. Any questions about that? All right. Any public comment? All right. Appreciate all the participation we've had today. Scheduling the next meeting. Is there? We actually got through our agenda pretty well. Although we do need to set up our follow-up meeting to discuss the subsidy question that FinCom asked, and to talk about our
The guidelines.
updating our guidelines. What's your pleasure, Rich and Linda, on, do we want to try to meet, say, next Tuesday, or do we want to do it later than that?
I could do it Tuesday.
Well, how realistic is it that we would have a draft of that letter that we're hoping Carrie could also look at?
This is the draft of the 930 Main letter, or
The letter to the FinCom that we were hoping Carrie would also look at.
You know, you can I mean, I think that's a question of Liz putting the exhibits together. I think the sort of preamble or qualifiers, I don't see any problem with having a draft of that. Liz, I assume you have those relatively, the comparables are fairly easy for you to get.
Well, you know, I can spend some time on it for when you say Tuesday, is that Tuesday at 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can try to have something. It would be, I don't know if that I'll have it much before the meeting though. So if you want to distribute it on Monday, I don't think I could do it for Monday. If you're okay with getting it on Tuesday. And
I think getting it on Tuesday would be great. And if we get if we can sort of look at the preamble that Rich is going to do, if we could look at that prior to the meeting, that would be I think that would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will have it at the meeting, but I don't think I can
Yeah.
get it to you before the meeting.
Yeah, and
I think that's okay. And
yeah,
I can.
that would be fine. Yeah, just
Okay.
just
I
to
can have the
know.
preamble around before that.
Yeah, just to know that what we attach to a preamble it will be available for us to talk about at the meeting. That would be great.
Mhm.
All right, so let's do Tuesday, March 14th at 5 p.m. on Zoom. All right, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second by, a motion by Rich, second by Linda. And now roll call vote. Linda,
Yes, and thank you.
Rich,
Yes, and a big thank you to Marcia and to Liz. I think we've absorbed a lot of information this evening.
absolutely. And Keith, yes. So that's unanimous. It is, and I'm unanimously joined in the thanks to Marcia and Liz for all that they're doing for us. And we are adjourned at 6:11 p.m. And my